They called it deranged, and that's a strong language for an author who has never been successfully sued for defamation and is also a lawyer. What made this situation unusual, however, is what happened next. Instead of ignoring the book,
sign that pressure is building is not the criticism itself, it is the behavior that follows. And that is what makes this Meghan story interesting right now. Not just the arrival of Tom Bower's new book, not just the excerpts already circulating, but the sense that something in the response has changed. Because when people feel comfortable, they tend to stay consistent. When they feel cornered, patterns start to break. That is why this moment stands out. The backdrop here is Bower's latest book, which has already generated attention before fully landing.
Instead of ignoring the book, a spokesperson for Harry and Meghan issued a sharply worded statement dismissing the book and accusing Bower of spreading conspiracy and melodrama, and that response is exactly what has people talking.
Harry and Meghan's side pushed back hard, with their lawyer dismissing it as some kind of deranged conspiracy. But that response may have done the opposite of what it was supposed to do. Instead of containing interest, it appears to have amplified it. Bower even pointed out that after the weekend serialization and the backlash around it, the book shot up Amazon's rankings. That matters because public fights like this rarely stay contained. Once a project is framed as forbidden, outrageous, or explosive, people want to know what is in it. The denial becomes promotion. The outrage becomes marketing. And suddenly the book is not just another royal title on the shelf. It becomes an event. Bower's broader argument is that Harry and Meghan are moving toward an endgame shaped by dwindling leverage, shrinking goodwill, and a need to reconnect themselves to royal relevance. In his telling, the Sussexes need the monarchy more now than they once wanted to admit. That is the bigger theme under all of this. Not independence, but reattachment. Not escape, but revalidation. He ties that idea to the possibility of a public reconciliation angle around the Invictus Games in Birmingham next July, suggesting that a return to Britain beside King Charles would offer exactly the kind of image reset the Sussexes need. But he also argues that such a plan is already complicated by politics, protest risk, and the fact that Prince William would almost certainly resist any easy reunion. Whether you agree with every part of that or not, the core point is easy to understand. If the royal connection is still the most valuable image asset they have, then any route back toward that orbit becomes strategically important. And that is where Meghan's recent behavior starts to look different. Because the strongest part of this story is not a headline, it is a pattern. The first example is small on the surface, but revealing. Meghan featured the book They Bloom Because of You in an Instagram reel. Fine, public figures do that all the time, but what stood out was what happened next. The author, Jessica Ehrlichs, reacted with obvious excitement, and then Meghan actually replied in the comments. That may sound minor, but in the context of Meghan's usual social media style, it is not. Avoid, that change is usually worth noticing. The comment itself also followed a familiar pattern, folding the moment back into her identity as a mother. Again, not shocking. But the act of engaging publicly at all felt like a departure. That is clue number one, a willingness to step into a more exposed, interactive mode online. Clue number 2 is the increased visibility of the children, especially Lily. Recent posts have leaned more heavily into that family imagery, with Archie also appearing more than before. Whether people see that as natural sharing or deliberate brand softening, the shift is still visible. And in media terms, that is significant. Family content changes the emotional register. It softens edges, redirects attention, and creates a different kind of conversation than criticism does. In other words, when the outside story gets harsher, the inside story often gets warmer. Then there is the third example, which may be the most unusual of the lot. Meghan appearing in that bathroom setting, hovering around two girls filming for TikTok, and then taking selfies with them afterward. It felt random, informal, and strikingly unlike the more controlled presentation people are used to seeing. But that may be the point. TikTok culture rewards proximity, looseness, and the feeling of spontaneity. Even when it is strategic, it has to look unstrategic. So if you step back and look at all three together, a comment response she normally would not make, more visible use of the children in social posts, and a more casual brush with social-first content, the bigger picture starts to emerge. This is not about one post. It is about volume. It is about presence. It is about trying to occupy more space at the exact moment another narrative is coming in hard. That does not automatically prove panic, but it does suggest urgency. And urgency is the real theme here. Because if Bower's book is set to define the next chapter of the conversation, then flooding the zone becomes an understandable tactic. More images, more relatability, more personal touches, more reminders of lifestyle, motherhood, accessibility, warmth. The problem is that visibility is not the same as control. In fact, when public behavior starts changing too obviously, it can have the opposite effect. People stop looking at the individual post and start asking why the pattern shifted in the first place. The strategy becomes the story, and that may be what is happening now. There is also an irony running through all of this. The attempt to dismiss Bower's work may have helped elevate it. The attempt to move attention elsewhere may be making audiences watch even more closely. And the attempt to look spontaneous may be reading, to critics at least, as unusually calculated. That is why this moment feels bigger than another round of royal commentary. It taps into a recurring question around Meghan's public image. When the pressure rises, does the presentation become more polished or more reactive? Right now, it looks reactive. Not because of one dramatic collapse, not because of one catastrophic mistake, but because the rhythm appears different. The engagement is different. The image choices are different. The public posture is different. And when that many things change at once, people notice. So the real test is not whether social media activity increases. It already has. The real test is whether any of it can actually blunt what is coming next, because if the book lands with the same force the early coverage suggests, then no amount of Instagram warmth, comment section intimacy, or TikTok-adjacent visibility will stop the larger conversation from taking over. That is the gamble. Outpost the story before the story engulfs you. Maybe that works for a news cycle or two, but if the criticism is strong enough, and if the public senses that the messaging itself is becoming more frantic, then the strategy does not calm the situation. It confirms it. And that is why this is worth watching. Not just the book, not just the headlines, the behavior. Because the behavior is starting to tell its own story. And once that starts happening, every move gets interpreted differently. A photo is no longer just a photo. A comment is no longer just a comment. A casual appearance does not read as casual anymore, because the audience is now looking for motive as much as meaning. That is the trap public figures fall into when the pressure builds. The harder they try to look relaxed, the more deliberate everything begins to feel. That is why this recent stretch matters more than any one individual post. It suggests a shift from long-range image management to short-range response, and those are two very different things. Long-range strategy feels controlled. It feels measured. Short-range response feels like plugging holes as they appear. One move follows another, and before long, the pattern starts to look less like confidence and more like compensation. And that is where Meghan's current positioning becomes difficult to ignore, because for years, so much of the public image rested on control. Controlled access, controlled messaging, controlled appearances, controlled interviews. But now the tone feels looser, more exposed, more eager to create a sense of closeness. That may be intentional. It may even be smart in the short term. But it also invites a different kind of scrutiny, because the more you let people in, the more they start comparing what you are showing them with what they think you are trying to hide. That is when audience perception becomes unpredictable. Some people will look at this and see a woman reconnecting with the public in a more personal way. Others will see a media strategy under strain, pushing harder because the usual methods are not working the way they used to. And once those two interpretations are competing side by side, the image stops feeling stable. It starts to wobble depending on who is looking at it. That wobble is important because reputation rarely collapses all at once. It weakens in stages. First, the message gets questioned, then the timing gets questioned, then the intent gets questioned. And once the public starts questioning intent, even the most polished content can end up feeding the very narrative it was supposed to shut down. So the issue here is not just whether Meghan is posting more, appearing more, or engaging more. The issue is what those choices signal in this specific moment, with this specific book approaching, under this specific cloud of attention. Because context changes everything. A softer image launched in calm conditions reads one way. The same image launched under obvious pressure reads another. And that is why this does not feel random. It feels reactive, not chaotic, not accidental, but reactive. Like a campaign that knows something difficult is coming and is trying to shape the emotional weather before the storm fully lands. This is the stage where spin stops looking like strategy and starts looking like survival. Every extra post, every carefully placed image, every sudden shift in tone only adds to the same underlying message. Something has changed. And when the pattern changes this visibly, people do not just watch the controversy. They watch the person trying to outrun it. That is where this really turns. Because the issue now is not whether bad press exists. It is whether the response to it is making the whole situation look even worse. From here on, every move will be read through that lens. Every appearance, every post, every attempt to soften the picture. And once that happens, there is no easy reset. So this may be the point where the narrative stops being controlled and starts controlling them. That is what makes this feel less like another royal media storm and more like the moment the whole facade starts buckling under its own weight. Stay with BarzBuzz, because this story is still moving and we are going to keep breaking down every piece of it. If this saga had you shook, wait till you see what's next. You already know what it is. BarzBuzz got the real, raw, and unfiltered breakdowns. So don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to catch up.